Hello and welcome to my second trauma video. Today we're going to talk about how people pleasing is a trauma response. And this was a webinar I attended hosted by a woman named Heidi Seppälä. And she was talking about people pleasing. She said that a child that is about around 2 to 3 years old is starting to look for who they are. They're looking for themselves. And they can only do that if they're in a safe environment. So let's say that there's alcoholism or a depressed parent, divorce, or an abandonment situation, or any situation really that where the child is unsafe. They can't look for themselves. They can't find themselves. And this has to do with the fact that the human brain is made in such a way that the nervous system is only supposed to be activated in short bursts at a time. Let's say for hunting or protecting oneself, or fighting for your life, or to just stay alive. It's not supposed to be an continuous stressor. However, in the current world, we don't have that kind of situations. It's rarely that we have to fight for our lives physically, or we don't hunt our own food, generally speaking. And so our version of stress and that activates the nervous system comes from work stress, a project that takes a long period of time to complete, or your children having a tantrum, and that those kinds of stress factors activates our nervous system. So the brain is made for these short bursts. So, and then a lot of rest afterwards. And in our current society, it's the other way around, really, where we have long-term stress and just a few short bursts of relaxation. And when you have relational trauma, your nervous system is even more sensitive and activates earlier and faster than for someone who doesn't have relational trauma. We learned that there are 3 ways to respond to danger: either fight, flight, or freeze. And during the fight and flight stage, your nervous system speeds up, your body speeds up, your blood starts pumping, and you get ready to activate, to do something. While during the freezing reaction, your body slows down, your breathing slows down, and you feel cold and frozen in place. For a child, when there's chaos in your home, like inside your safe space, so to speak, a child can't really fight. You can fight for a short time, but generally speaking, the fighting ends eventually. There's nothing to gain from fighting. The child cannot flee because the child is so reliant on the parents' care and the parents' nurturing that it cannot get away from it. It will not survive without the parents. That means that the nervous system eventually gives up, and instead the child freezes. But freezing isn't the only response. A man named Pete Walker came up with a 4th response that he called fawn. And fawn is basically a way to please or appease the danger, so to speak. And all the 3, fight, flight, and appease, are all activating reactions. They all do something, while the freezing is the only one that sort of is deactivating. It's passive. During our trauma responses, we can't be our authentic self, and we can't connect to other people in a meaningful way. So that means we can't socialize. And for us, the socialization is the relaxation period. When we socialize, we feel relaxed, or our nervous system feels relaxed. Not for everyone, and not in the same extent to everyone, but generally speaking, that is when our nervous system is in the relax mode, when we're in a safe social environment. Pete Walker came up with 3 different versions of the fawn. There's the fight fawn, which is a person is busy trying to help other people. They are trying to be perfectionist. And I definitely see myself in that category a lot. I feel like I need to be perfect before I can sort of socialize. I need to do everything right, and I do need to I need to make sure everyone else is all right before I am all right. And I also see that I often try to tell people how they should live their lives, that they should live their life in a better way, that is, in my opinion, a better way. And that is something I definitely feel like I need to stop. I can't dictate how other people should live their lives. But that is a people-pleasing trauma response. Then there's the flight fawn. And the flight fawn is someone who uses humor or becomes the class clown to gain acceptance and understanding from other people. And that's how they people please. And that's also something that I've noticed that I do in many situations. During my YouTube videos, I definitely feel like I, at some points, go more towards the humorous me and performative me. And I guess that's how I try to appease by flight. Then there's the freeze fawn, and the freeze fawn is someone who you need to say no. Someone asks you something and you need to say no, but you just can't get the word out. So instead you agree to their demands or their wishes, even though you don't want to. And Heidi Seppälä used this example where a person was in a relationship with another person, and the other person wanted this individual to meet their parents, and this individual agreed to it even though they didn't feel like they were ready for it yet. And eventually, after many times just coming up with excuses of why they couldn't meet just that day, the individual felt so resentful towards their partner who wanted them to meet their parents that in the end they started pulling away, and they ended the relationship just because they felt so resentful towards the other partner, even though they themselves could have said, no, I'm not ready for that yet. But they just didn't feel like that was an option. And that's part of the freeze fawn. Then she talked about, Heidi Seppälä talked about attachment versus authenticity, meaning that when a parent can't approach a child in a proper manner and they can't see the child for who the child is, the only solution the child has is to adapt to the parent. The child notices that the parent isn't accepting them for who they are, And so they feel like they have to change because they won't survive otherwise. And that means that attachment beats authenticity in that the act of survival is more important than being yourself. In a way, this sort of people-pleasing is manipulation. You are manipulating another person into thinking you are someone that you're not. And this other person is learning about you, the fake you that you created. And this will sabotage friendships. She used as an example, your friend calls and asks you to come over, and you don't really feel like coming over, but you say yes anyway. In that situation, you don't answer honestly, you don't answer the way you really should, according to your personality. And this is something that I definitely see myself in. I talked in a different video about how my friends would invite me over, and I would always say yes, because I always thought that of course I want to go. But when the time came to actually go, I felt like I don't want to do that. And that's when I came up with all kinds of excuses for why I couldn't come over. And that definitely put a strain on my friendships, and is most likely the reason why they are no longer my friends. When you're in a fawn reaction, you don't get seen or heard or loved or accepted for who you are because you're not your authentic self. And that is a problem for you, because you always feel like you're not, no one understands you. Your body always reacts to this trauma, and including the fawn reaction, you get physical symptoms, and that leads to your relationship suffering, and not only physical but also mental symptoms, and that lead to illnesses. And your illnesses puts your body in survival mode, and in survival mode you can't authentically connect to another person, and that means your relationships suffer. And in the end, that means that your body, yourself, don't get your social needs met. It's also much easier to, shall we say, be vulnerable to bullies. You're much more a target for bullies and different kind of teasings and freezing out and other kinds of bad behaviors. And one of the reasons is because you can't say no or stand up for yourself. And I noticed that myself with my neighbor. I have a crazy neighbor who tried to be my friend, and she was running up and down the stairs to my apartment almost every day. And one day she came at 9 p.m. and I was naked. It was summer. It was extremely hot. And like I said, it was 9 p.m. and I was in no way ready to entertain guests or talk, or, well, I say talk, but it was more like I was listening to her talk. And that day I decided that I'm not going to open the door, because I couldn't open the door and say, I'm sorry, I don't have time right now. So I just decided to not open the door at all. I was going to avoid the situation. And that led to her blocking my apartment door with my furniture. And from that on, we were fighting, and we were very antagonistic towards each other, and she was very aggressive towards me. Eventually, the situation eased up when I decided to help her when she was in need. But until then, I just couldn't say no, and I couldn't stand up for myself, so I was an easy target for her bullying. And the same was in schools. I was also an easy target in schools because I didn't stand up for myself. There's another story that sort of is part of this, but sort of not. But I decided that I'm going to tell it anyway, of how one trauma was, shall we say, solved. I had a school bully for a very long time, and eventually I thought I would get rid of him because we were going to go to separate schools, separate high schools. Unfortunately, we had to have some classes over at his school, and so he would continue teasing me when we were in that school. And one of the reasons why he continued to tease me was because we had a special class in our school for special people, and he would make fun of us for that. Then the next year, it turned out that he ended up in that special class, and he ended up getting bullied because he was very skinny and short, and he ended up being bullied by the older boys. And for a long time I felt that that's my sort of revenge story, and I've sort of kept it in my heart as like, haha, I got you back. But now when I started learning about trauma and getting older and going through my own problems, I no longer felt that the revenge story was a success. And when I took my expert by experience course, there was a guy there who shared the same name as my bully, and this man, he was also on the thinner side, and he had blonde hair like the bully and blue eyes like the bully. And I remember when I went into the class and I saw him and I saw his name tag, my heart stopped, and I was probably glaring at him for the first few classes. Like, I knew it wasn't my bully, but at the same time, I could never be sure that was he or was he not. It was such a strange feeling of that's my bully. And at the end of the class, I've come to forgive my bully and understand my bully. His life wasn't easy either. And I've come to understand him better, and for real this time, get closure. I guess I just wanted to mention that as my bully story and my bully rehabilitation story. I never really thought that I was the one who was the people pleaser, because I was always very rebellious in my own eyes. But when I look back, I did a lot of people pleasing. For example, I always kept our families the way our family worked, which wasn't a proper way. I always kept it a secret, and I tried to keep the illusion that everything was fine. And I remember when my oldest sister decided to contact the social workers because she wasn't fine, and she didn't want it to continue like this. She actually wanted some help for it. And I was so mad at her for betraying the family in my eyes, where I was trying to make sure that no one ever found out that things were wrong. And she went and blabbed about it. That was like the worst thing she could have done in my eyes. Another thing where I remember people pleasing was in school. I have a very big fondness for history, and unfortunately, my brain does not do well with numbers, so I never remember dates. I have a very hard time remembering any dates, which meant that I wasn't very good at history. However, I was very good at art, and it was something that everyone was talking about, my art skills. But for me, in my eyes, my art skills weren't my art skills. I felt like they were my mother's art skills, because my mother is very artistic, and everyone in our family is, well, all of her children are very artistic. And so I never felt like it was my skill. Whenever someone complimented me for my art, it felt like they were complimenting my mother for the art, for the genes that she gave me. And I wanted to stand out, and so I tried to do that with history. I think I took almost every single history lesson in high school, and I really, really wanted to please my history teacher. I wanted him to see me for my history efforts, my efforts in learning history, and my love for history. And so we had this assignment, and it was about the Middle Ages, which is my favorite, age. I absolutely love knights and Templars and the Crusades and castles and all of those things. They were like my absolute favorite thing. And so we had to write a sort of 15-20 page thing about knights, and I was so proud of the work I had done. I'd put so much effort into it, and I was like, this is how he's going to see me. Now he's going to see me for my love for history. When I gave the assignment, he looked at it and he said, "Did you draw this front page?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "It's really good." And my heart broke at that point. That was the only compliment he gave me. The rest of the assignment was not good enough for him. And I still remember how I think my face fell, sort of like I had been so excited showing him this assignment, and then I got complimented on my art in a history lesson rather than the work itself. And it hurts today still. I feel like I'm about to cry. And when we graduated and the teachers were singing a song about us, I was pretty sure that, first off, I was pretty sure that they wouldn't remember me at all. I felt like nobody ever remembers me. And they did remember me, but they remembered me again from my art. And so I was very resentful for that as well. When I got to university, where I studied tourism, the first year I did extremely well. I was trying to be perfect, a perfect student, because my mom was a teacher at that school. So I tried to be as good as possible and do as well as possible. And I got pretty perfect grades all year. But the next couple of years, I could no longer keep up that same pace because it was draining. And so my grades fell, and I felt really bad about that. I've also tried to please my therapists along the years. Even when their help isn't helping, I've always told them that, yeah, it's helping. You're doing really well, and I'm getting better, and I know that they haven't been able to see my trauma because I have hidden it, not by purpose, not consciously, but subconsciously I've hidden it from them, and I've pretended that things are better than they are so that I wouldn't hurt their feelings, because I didn't want them to feel like they had failed. And so whenever they started seeing my progress and see that I wasn't progressing as I should have, and they started talking about, maybe this isn't for you, maybe you need something else, I would go in a panic, and I would be like, no, this is helping, this is really helping, I'm getting better, I mean, look at how much better I am now, and I'm doing really good, almost like, please don't throw me away, please, I need this, please don't throw me away. And when eventually the therapies ended because there was nothing else they could do, I always felt like such a failure. And it's not until now, with the social rehabilitation that I've been doing, where I can actually feel the help, because I'm finally myself, and I can finally be my authentic self rather than the fake one who just says, oh yes, please, this is working, this is working, please don't leave me. But yeah, those were my examples of how I have been people pleasing, even though I've always thought that I haven't been people pleasing. And Heidi Seppälä, she gave 3 steps to heal your people pleasing trauma. And the first step is to look at yourself with compassion. Notice your reactions when your nervous system is starting to activate. And find some way to calm your body, whether it's like rubbing your hands together, or maybe patting yourself, or something to calm down your body. The second step is practice disappointing others. As adults, we are capable of receiving disappointments and dealing with them. And so we have a fear of being pushed away if we disappoint others. And so we should try to learn how to disappoint others with a good conscience. Listen to yourself, and if you need to disappoint someone, they can handle it. They're adults. And the third step is learn who you are, what you need, what you want, what your limits are, and to actively choose to be vulnerable. When you're vulnerable, that's when the healing happens, and that's when you're your authentic self. And yeah, it might be scary. It might be very scary to be vulnerable, and I know from myself that I cannot say nice things, because that's me being vulnerable. So I always say them in a mean way, sort of like, yeah, I like you, so what? Sort of like that. But that's the 3 steps. Look at yourself with compassion, practice disappointing others, and learn who you are yourself. And that's how you stop pleasing everyone at your own expense. It's okay to please people as long as it's not against what you need and your desires. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the second chapter in Juha Klaavu's book. And I thank you very much for being here and listening to my review of the webinar. I'll leave a link to Heidi Seppälä's webpage down in the description, so that if you're interested, if you speak Finnish and you're interested in more of her webinars or courses, you can find her there. And thank you very much for being here, and see you in the next video. Bye. Thanks for stopping by. I love you. Bye.